Today we will be diving into easy and relaxing watercolor doodles for beginners. This is day 4 of our 30-day art challenge, and today's prompt is "You got it, doodles." Before we dive into the video, there is a free downloadable calendar in the description box below, as well as materials that I'll be using in this video. Also, if this is your first time here, my name is Cynthia with Mindful Creative Muse. We share creative and calming practices for self-care. Largely mindful art, also known as meditative art. I'm a minimalist at heart, so many of our 5-minute mindful art activities can be done with very minimal art supplies and not a lot of time to help you de-stress at home. Okay, so let's dive into some watercolor doodles for beginners. I'm so excited to share this really simple and easy watercolor doodle exercise with you today. It's a great way to step into your mindful art journal at home. If you need to de-stress and do a quick exercise, if you're feeling stuck, this is a great thing to do before making something else. If you're new to watercolor or if you're a beginner with watercolors, this is also a great way to just get used to some of your materials. So I do have the materials in the description box link below. Here you can see I'm just getting some color on the page, sort of like choosing swatches if you were to go to a paint store. I'm creating my own swatches of color here. Now you can choose anything that you'd like here. I chose just a handful of colors, and I really like to, in this exercise, focus on some complementary colors. I have a lot of yellow orangish tones and blue purple tones as well. I always encourage to just go with the first color that's really kind of speaking to you, and then you can make decisions from there. This really is a doodle idea and doodle exercise to get you creating quickly without having judgment. So much about mindful art and meditative art is being present and giving yourself permission to play and create without being judgmental. So this, you can see, is moving pretty quickly. The video is sped up, so a nice part about this practice is you can move very slowly through it, and I find that meditative as well. Many creatives, and you may be in this category as well, many creatives can feel stuck or blocked or have a really strong inner critic. We want to do something right. As we're making art, we might be judging it internally. So I just want to name that that is a really normal experience, so you are absolutely not alone. If you follow Brene Brown, she's one of my idols. I love her. She talks about how in her research, it was like 70% of the people that she surveyed in her studies had some form of shame around their creativity from when they were a younger child. So I just find that so amazing. It really can be within us to have that concern. So this is a free, safe space for us to create without judgment. So now that I have the colors on the page here, I'm just starting to make marks. So what do I mean by making marks? Doodles, watercolor doodles especially, there's no right or wrong. So what I do is I look first at the watercolors on the page. I check to see if there's any interesting lines or marks in the watercolors that I can embellish or add to. So with this yellow one at the bottom, I was really curious about that bottom edge. And so I used those lines to accentuate the edge and then filled in as well around it. So one thing I encourage when you start playing around with marks is to vary the types of lines that you're making. So you can see here I have some straight lines, I have circles, I have some more organic shapes that are more rigid. And so you can really play around with that. I have a Pinterest board. If you are on Pinterest and you find that motivational or inspirational, I have a whole board that is 100% dedicated to different line work, patterns, and really to help inspire your watercolor doodle practice at home. So creating these watercolor doodles. So this one, it was so funny as I was making it, I just kept thinking about a sailboat. So you might, as you start to doodle, notice different things in your marks. I just find that sometimes humorous and really sweet. The sailboat made me think of nature, and that also started to influence some of the marks that I began making. So here you can see I have a white jelly roll pen as well, which I have linked down below. It's great to use on darker colors in the background. It still will appear very faint, but it's sort of just like having a sweet white line appear there. So the nature influence I thought of made me think of smaller flowers, which you can see in those next two doodles that I started to explore. So if you have not seen, I have a 5-minute creative drawing practice as well as other mindful mandalas. These are all related to the meditative art practices that I teach online in my courses and with students. And if you're liking this exploration, this watercolor doodle exercise, then I think you'll really enjoy that. I will link those as well. You can check those out. There's definitely more mark making to give you some ideas and inspiration as you make abstract watercolor doodles. So one thing that you might notice as you make these is you won't always love the marks that you're making. Now this doodle in particular, on this teal one, I wanted to have some harsher lines because I was creating a lot of organic shapes. So I was just keeping it really simple with these singular lines. And as I was making them, I couldn't decide how I felt about the marks. I kept wanting to leave it spacious, but then it felt unbalanced. So I just started filling up more of that whole doodle. So I want to just say this about when we make something that we may or may not like in our artwork. And that is that I often focus on mindful art and meditative art being about the actual process, not the final product. So it really can be another way for us to meditate. I specifically make these watercolor doodles and mindful art to relax. They're easy, they're fun, they're simple. I can do them to de-stress from my day. Many of my students find them very de-stressing and relaxing. And so we're not trying to make a huge masterpiece that we're selling and putting up on the wall. And even if you are doing that, if this feeds into that type of artwork that you're creating, I always like to find a way in where I can enjoy the process as I'm making them. And so that's just something to keep in mind, that those any judgmental thoughts, that's totally normal. And we're not always going to love everything that we make. But that mark that we're making might be a stepping stone into that next expression that we do love, that, you know, next watercolor doodle that we make, the next mindful mandala that we make. I also teach soul collage. So all of that will lend itself and will spark other ideas for you as you're creating. So it may not be something you love in this moment, but it can be a stepping stone towards something that you really love and enjoy later. So the other thing I want to say too is that this, I mentioned that it's a simple practice, but the marks themselves can be very simple. You can leave a lot of space as you're doing this. You don't have to come up with these brilliant shapes or, you know, make a statement in the marks that you're making. It really can be just for your enjoyment. And so much of our visual language with patterns and mark making are very simple. They oftentimes will just sort of feed onto each other, you know, build onto those shapes. So you can see here I'm using that jelly roll pen again with the white to just kind of fill in. Some of me know to make more like these. If you'd like more meditative watercolor doodle inspiration, definitely check out these videos that are appearing on your screen, and I will see you in the next video.